Okay, everyone. So now, what I just want to do here, as I mentioned, we do have our client side. That just means this is what your client will be seeing once we try to publish this on the browser, right? And index.html is a way for us to know where the home page of our website is going to be located as we try to upload this into our web server. Right now, we're going to be running it inside of XAMPP. So I'm just going to open this up. And as I've mentioned, PHP is a server-side scripting language. So if you have a little bit of background with JavaScript already, just to give some... Let me just close this and this. Let's have a script tag. So let's just write a very simple script here that will be accessing the console.log. Hello world. So this is just an object. We're accessing a method inside of it that's simply a function, and we have a string literal data type that, if we correctly implemented this, if we refresh this, we should now see on our console that hello world text. So you would see it's getting rendered on the browser from the client side. So that means if I'm doing some testing, I can use the console for me to be able to check on whether my script here is running. Even if our server is actually not running, you would see I've already turned off my server, and I actually haven't used my server here yet. So let's try to go refresh this again. There's that hello world, and if I try to go open the server, and let me just go. So I've just typed here localhost, and then the directory from where we do have 2024-php-course, and that's the directory from where we have our htdocs is located. You would see this is the 2024 php-course, and it's accessing this right now from the localhost server that we have in here. So if we try to go to our admin, you would see this is the PHP my admin. Localhost dashboard is basically just the dashboard inside of the htdocs. If we go to our PHP my admin here, you would find that we have some information here, and we can find some information like the database server. We have some of the databases that I have set up in my XAMPP or XAMPP here, and we have the web server information like the Apache 2.4.54, and we have our version for MySQL, which is 8.2.0. We have version for PHP is 8.2.0 currently, the one that is installed in my machine. So just have that in mind so far. Now let's go back to our code base, and we now have our script in JavaScript here, and it's running inside of our web server in our local host, specifically our XAMPP here or XAMPP here is running right now, and it's running that script because that's going to be displayed, or it will be accessible on the console, which is what we're trying to do here inside of our script tags. And now if we try to type a very quick PHP line here, or a script for PHP, so let's try to go and work with PHP tags, and you would see this is not getting read correctly by our Visual Studio Code because we have a .html file and not a .php file extension. So Visual Studio Code is pretty smart to detect that this is a PHP tags opening and closing, and we would want to test out if this is going to work. If we have PHP version here, of course we'll have to change the file extension, rename that to .php, and now you would see it's getting rendered correctly. Let's see what would happen if we run this method here, and if we go back to our browser, if we try to refresh this, we do get the 8.2.0 being echoed in our local host, or in our browser right now. In our procedural PHP 2024, we are able to get this PHP version. And we do see that that's what happened here. We use the echo command. It's inside of the PHP tags, opening and closing, and we have a method. So just have in mind, a method is like a function, a built-in function inside of the language, and we're just trying to access that PHP version through the use of this method, and we're echoing it on our browser so that it will be outputted on our browser here. And what happens if, for example, we stop our, this is what I just want to show you guys. If I stop the server, what will happen? You would see we're now encountering this issue of delay on the loading, and we're having it's saying unable to connect, try again. That issue is actually happening because we have closed our web server. So just to show a proof of concept, if we try to refresh, we now have the server and it's rendering our index.php file, which is currently in our directory here. And we need a server for us to be able to run the PHP file or the script that we have in our code here, the line 10 to 12. Because this is a back-end scripting language, and as I mentioned, and I did show you here that we have some databases to store data that users might be able to submit to our website. Let's say, for example, we have a login system and we want to gather some information from our users, and we want those information to be stored on our database so that they can relog in. Once they log out, they can relog in with the same credentials that they have used to sign up in our website. So through the help of a server-side programming language like PHP, we are able to communicate to this server, to this computer. So just have in mind that this is a local host server that we installed into our own machine so that we can do some test development. However, when we go out and we go to, let's say I want to go look for a hosting provider. Let me just type here hosting provider, like hosting sites like GoDaddy, HostGator, and all of these possible providers for you to be able to publish your website on the web. They will just be also having a computer running on their remote location, and they have a software that from where they will be utilizing that so that they will be able to provide us with the option to store the information that we have written in our PHP code, so that those information will be stored into their server that is currently running a software similar to what we're currently doing here right now, like XAMPP, that contains some sort of a way for them to store and create databases that will be storing the information in their machines that then can be used so that our users will be able to log in, log out from the website, from our website that we built for them that is currently hosted in those machines or in those servers. So just have that in mind. And one other thing that I just want to discuss here is the idea that this here will not be working if we don't have a server. Let me just bring this back to HTML and let's go. You will see, let's go back, reveal in File Explorer, open this up with a browser, Firefox Developer Edition. You would see that the version is not actually working. This 8.2.0 is not working because the server is, we're not using the local host server in trying to access we're not using this local host or the IP address. We can also, by the way, access the web server through the use of the IP address. That means, let me just go back to phpMyAdmin, and we do have this 127.0.01, and if I copy that, and then I'll try to paste that on my machine here, you would see that it's also providing us that localhost dashboard. As you can see here, 127.0.1, and we can also go to phpMyAdmin here through the use of that IP address of our web server. But in this case, the file, the index.html file that we have, we're not trying to access that using the localhost web server or XAMPP, even though it's running, but we opened it up on the browser through directly clicking on the file. You would see that the 8.2.0 here is not showing up. And again, this is also going to be, you will see I try to refresh this, because we changed the .html file, it's no longer getting rendered there. And if I try to go back here, and most of the HTML files that we have can work with a .php file. Okay, so you would see most of the things that we have written in HTML are also working in our localhost URL here from where the server is running. But here we can see that the file is not found, right? And if we try to change that to .php, let me just see. We do see that we can open it up, but just take note, this is not me accessing the file from the localhost server, but instead through the IP, or I'm not accessing it from the, where's the example that I showed here? Let me just open the browser. Just close this, and here, this is from access through the direct full path of the file location in our local machine. But this one, we're accessing it through the server. And we can also access our index.php file through the IP address that we have here. So those are some additional things to know about. And as I mentioned, PHP code cannot run inside of a .html file. However, markup language, we can run them inside of a .php file, and JavaScript also. Let's try to just to have a proof of concept in spec, and there's still that JavaScript hello world inside of our browser. In here, we see that the JavaScript still there, but this is not showing us the PHP code that we have written, that is showing the version of our PHP code. And in here, we do have here the JavaScript is still running inside of our .php file. It's not showing up in our URL, but we do see the directory from where we have our file located, which is 2024 PHP course htdocs here. So I hope you got some ideas here on how PHP can be run inside of our browser, and how to work with a basic PHP file so far. And we now have our index.php file here. So if I try to go and have an echo of a string literal here, let's just say, hello world, this is my first PHP script. I have written my first PHP script. So if I go back to the browser and refresh this, you would see it's not working in our full path to the file index.php, but in our server, we can see that we now have that hello world. I have written my first PHP script beside the version 8.2.0 here. And if we wanted to have some sort of a line break, we'll have to echo break here and refresh, and now we have that line break. So we just combine the line break and the echo command so that we can echo the HTML element line break here. So I think that's it for this lesson. I hope you learned some new tips and you understood the lessons here. So thank you, and see you on our next lessons.